Hey everybody, welcome back to FDE. I'm Mac. Week 2. What a success this week has been. It was an absolute turnaround from what last week was. So last week, after seeing the results and what happened, I basically decided I need to go through and read some information, read some literature, get online, ask some people, talk to some people, hopefully get some ideas on how to address some of the issues I'm having. The manufacturer of the cart that I'm racing, Rage, back when I first started to ask what the cart was, they sent me some helpful tips, some information, some literature that I needed to go through and read, and so I was perusing through it and found a moment where they talked about specifically what was going on with the cart, and that is a four-wheel drift. It just kind of blew my mind after reading what they were talking about and what their suggestions were. I decided, hey, what the heck? Why not? Might as well try it. So on top of that, also talking to the guy that did the tires for me, I explained to him what was going on. I was explaining what the tires were doing and his suggestions. So he got back to me, thankfully, and pointed out, here's where I would start and here's where I would go as the night progresses with the tires. As soon as I made the adjustments on the chassis, the front end of the chassis according to Rage's recommendations, as well as setting the tires up in the suggested air pressure that the tire guy said, I went out on practice and I was blown away at how much better it handled. I'm not saying that the car is perfect because it was minor adjustments if you look at the math of it, but those minor adjustments made a huge improvement for this week's race. Overall, it was a successful start. Let's begin by talking about Heat 1. So Heat 1 was a bit of a roller coaster. Did a P-pick, I got second, and starting second is never fun because it's always outside. I know KC Raceway tries to make their track a 2 or 3 lane track, but it's always tough and it ends up just being a 1 lane track. So starting in outside position is always tough because you're kind of not in the right spot to begin with, but that's all right. Setting the tire pressures to the suggested spot of where my tire guy told me to do it meant that the car was not going to roll as fast as what it could roll. And there's many reasons behind it, the way the tires are set up, the way the pressures are ran, but it was all justified based off of how the track was set up. And at the current time, the track was dusty, it was dry, there wasn't much rubber down because there wasn't very many karts out. But setting the tires up to the PSI that he recommended made a huge difference in it, and I could feel it right away. I didn't have to oversteer the cart as much as what I noticed from last week. The car actually rolled through the turns and it drove itself, which is a really great feeling because it's hooking up great. Unfortunately, I got up onto a cart. I came in a little hot, and I know he's probably going to watch his videos, so Derek, buddy, sorry, kind of caught you there. But besides that, it was a great heat. Ended up winning it. Didn't really set me up for a better position in Heat 2 because of inverse. I still started second, but it was a great feeling overall. So take a look. So Heat 2 was a bit of a cluster. I made some adjustments to tire pressure according to what the tire guy suggested if the track did a certain thing, and of course, the track did not do that thing. It actually stayed pretty consistent to Heat 1, which made my adjustments not quite the best for Heat 2. So I had to legitimately drive this kart to race through this heat, which, I mean, you win some, you lose some. Unfortunately, I didn't make any advancements in pole. I ended up starting second, ended up finishing second, but it wasn't without a fight. The inverse meant that the kid that won the track championship was now sitting inside pole to me. So I knew I was going to be up for a battle already starting on the outside, but with the tires not set up correctly, it just wasn't going to be a good race. So I had to push through. I had to really just kind of push it in places it didn't really want to go, but I had to force it in, and I was able to pull out a second in the heat, which was a good thing. But besides that, it was a good learning experience of what to do with the tires next time. Where I went with the tires was basically the opposite direction of where I should have gone, and I now know that. So take a look. Feature race. It was an awesome race. It was an awesome battle. Probably the most fun I've had in a kart in quite a long time. It was a lot of back and forth, which makes me feel good because it makes me feel like I'm making some progress. Running against a kid that in this class was track champion the year before, you know, being able to battle with him makes you feel good because you're making progress and you're seeing good things. It was a great race. Luckily, I started pole position going into the feature, so I was inside. Unfortunately, one car had to back out, so I knew it was going to be a tough battle. I knew he wasn't going to let me go. He was going to be there the whole time, and he was. I mean, I could feel him behind me, nudging him, constantly making passes back and forth. It was such a good race. Something I noticed that I forgot about dirt oval racing compared to sprint racing, which is where I was previously before this. So in sprint racing, if you make a mistake, a small mistake even at that, the way sprint racing goes, you have a lot of time to make it back up. One of the things that people told me that was frustrating about racing me in sprint racing was that my weaknesses and my strengths were both my inconsistencies. People said all the time, and they laughed at it, they said, it was tough to race against you because you were so inconsistent. which is not good for racing, of course. But they said the bad part about it for us was because you were so inconsistent, we couldn't find out where we could get you. We couldn't find out where we could pass you. We couldn't find out where we could overtake you because you were never consistent in the same spot, which made it very difficult for us when we were behind you, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time, because as long as I kept them behind me, I mean, they could never figure out how to pass me, I guess. But knowing that and going into dirt oval, when dirt oval races, we only get 8 laps at roughly 12 to 13 seconds a lap. So within the first lap or second lap, you have to find out what your car is doing and fast. Because at that point, after lap 2, you only got 6 more laps to then try to figure out the person in front of you, if there is somebody in front of you, how to get them. And then once you figure that out, maybe another lap or 2 in, there you've only got 4 laps left basically to figure out how to drive. You've got 4 laps left to race. It is something that I forgot about in doing this. Being quick, being consistent is more important in my opinion in dirt oval than it is in sprint. Because if you miss one apex, if you miss one turn, one bad smidge little miss, it'll cost you everything. And that happened in the feature. You'll see in one lap, in turn 1 and 2, I came in just a little bit too hot. Cart got a little bit too sideways and I had to really overcorrect, which bogged the cart down and allowed the racer to go around me. But that didn't stop me. I mean, I caught back up to him. We had good battles. It was a great time. Just overall, such a fun experience. And even though it didn't come out with the win, I came off the track extremely happy, extremely enthused. I was grinning ear to ear, having so much fun, because if people watch that, and I'm sure they probably did, I know that they had fun watching that, because the way we were racing, nobody really knew how it was going to come out. And it was either the last lap or the second to last lap. There was a moment where had I hugged the inside of him a little bit more, I did have my outside edge on his inside left rear tire. And had I maintained it there, I mean, it would have made it a little hairy going into 3 to 4. But probably could have pushed him out of the way to get the win. On that note, there was something very important I saw from a racing perspective watching a video that said one of the top things you need to know in racing is when you've been beat. What that means is you could be super aggressive and run the risk of actually taking 2 people out that don't need to be taken out. Or you can just be okay with the fact that, hey, they had just a little bit better of a night. I'm not going to risk, I'm not going to force this because it could end up taking us both out. He gets it, I get second place, that's fine. There's always next week. And I remember that moment, it was just like it clicked in my head when I knew that I had that forced inside position if I wanted it. But I knew that it could end badly. And the last thing you want to do is have a bad taste in other racers' mouth, especially coming in first year. You don't want to be the person known as the guy that just forces and pushes his way into everything. So I did what I could for as long as I could. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hold him off, but it even came down to the very last laps, even the last lap, and it was just an overall great experience. So I'll let you see the feature. Glad you guys came by. Thanks for hanging out. Next week, looking forward to it.
man. Gosh dang it. Oh man. Right there. I got a little too sideways on one lap, but that was a heck of a race. That was a lot of fun. That was fun. That was fun.